Hi, and thank you for joining me for another video. And friends, this week's Parsha is Parashat Devarim. And the Parsha, and actually the book of Devarim, begins by the Almighty taking the Israelites out of their comfort zone. The Parsha begins by Hashem saying to the Israelites that it's time to go, that they've stayed here on the mountain, on Mount Sinai, too long, and it's time to go out and take. In other words, go out and fight for what I promised to give you and your fathers. And friends, this message is as applicable today as it ever was back then. On how many today think that one should only seek out the heavenly and completely disregard their worldly commitments. But in the contrary, this parsha is here teaching us that comfort is not always constructive, that glory cannot exist without a fight, that even being with God without first an initial struggle in the name of goodness could actually be counterproductive. Now, many would say and do say in this world today that if God really loved us, he would have left us on the mountain with him safe and trouble-free and burden-free and not having to fight anymore. And friends, this is heard today from both religious and secular alike, which is why people choose to live in places like a yeshiva, or if you actually think about it, was the main reason that the Jewish state of Israel was established in the first place, to keep us safe from the rest of the world. But this, my friends, are not the characteristics of a good God, who is also responsible for the well-being of all his creatures, which is why the way he shows his love to us, and not only to us, but to the rest of the world, is by being like a mother bird and kicking us out of the nest and having us emulate him to the rest of the world. And this, my friends, is something we could easily see in our world today, the notion of asceticism, of being too heavenly good that we're no earthly good, teaching us that, seriously, how could you ever appreciate this unless you first go through that? Which, at least in my opinion, gives us a little perspective on why we suffer in life in the first place, on why living a perfect, trouble-free existence may even be ultimately detrimental to our souls. Which is the only way we could really understand that passage in Tehillim that states that those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. And really, the only thing is that in life, you have those who suffer and learn, and those who suffer and don't, and in turn make others suffer. And those that view all suffering as punishment, and those who view suffering as an opportunity to grow and refine their character and still persist in happiness with an enthusiasm that surpasses all understanding. Which is why, friends, that the modern Jewish notion that we just want to be left alone could not suffice for a people who have a message and a mission from the Creator himself, who himself is also accountable to all things. Why? Because he created all things. Left alone? Left alone for what? And do you really think Judaism could ever make sense without some duty to the world? Which is why the notion of Mashiach now never made much sense to me. Mashiach now, and then what? What have we learned as a people, and how would we have grown as a species if Mashiach just came today? But Mashiach and Geula as a goal after all the hard work is done, and as a frosting on the cake, that's it, my brother. And friends, the Parsha goes on to remind us on our duty to judge our fellow man fairly. And then it goes on to say, in the same context, that we should not fear any man. Not fear? How could you legislate that? Which is why, my friends, those of you who decide to shrug off living a life of faith and obedience for common sense or any lesser belief system will always fall short to the Torah-believing Jew. Why? Because, friends, our future does not rely on common sense alone, and our battles we fight daily are not left up to chance. Just like it states in this parak that it is God who intercedes, it is God himself who ensures our success. In other words, there's nothing more than reason standing on the divine. And then the Parsha goes on, and within the same context, we have the Almighty tell Israel to go up, take possession, as Hashem has told you. Fear not, neither be dismayed. Again, it tells us to fear not. Also, in the 29th pasuk of the first parak, it says, referring to the giants, do not dread them and do not fear them. And friends, I think that this parsha really solidifies the destiny of the Jewish people, a destiny that defies reality. A people united by a world-shaking and impacting belief that, like it alludes in the beginning of the parsha, is useless if kept on some mountain, which is why Hashem tells us to leave. And it's also a belief that destroys us if we do not obey it whether Jew or Gentile. An assurance that goodness and obedience does not go unrewarded. And this is why our Torah is so important, and it is so applicable and relatable to people even today. Why? Because the whole history of the Jewish people, from Abraham having a son in his old age, to the Jews leaving Egypt, to the splitting of the sea, till where they are now, should not have happened, because everything that happened was not supposed to happen if it was left up to natural circumstance. And that everything that happened to them didn't happen for their sake, but for the sake of the world hearing their story. And in every generation, relating to the characters and saying that if God did this for them, he could do this for me also, only if I believe and obey. And this is why Rabbi Asher says in Pesach and Pezayin that even the exile from Israel was only for the world to benefit by attaching themselves to Israel. You see, this is a selfless religion, my friends. And this is why I said that all these stories are just here to instruct us on how to live our lives through faith and action. And friends, by lacking any of these two components, we actually nullify and fail to live up to his instructions, and thus nullify the reason we were called, we were chosen, we were appointed in the first place, which is exactly what's described in the first parak of this parsha, when it retells the story of the spies, that after they returned and gave a bad report and angered God, do they then act and say that we will go up now and fight, when God said that because of their disobedience, if they fight, they will lose. Again, because they initially didn't believe God enough to act when he said so, but rather when they felt comfortable to. In other words, they had the action without the faith and the obedience. So today, friends, you can decide for yourself to start living a life of purpose and blessing. You could decide to live by our God's precious instructions for humanity. Today, you can decide to join the Jewish people through conversion. If you're interested in converting to Judaism, please visit doordea.com. And if you're interested in learning anything about Judaism, please visit bejewish.org. Thank you.